yes, dear, we're making more progress now, yes, dear, we're making more progress now, yes, dear, we're making more progress now, still have a long way to go. They promised to bring us more revenue and quality, promised to bring us more revenue and quality, promised to bring us more revenue and quality, Instead is now on its way. Yes, dear.
Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Haron, back again for another program. Tonight's main feature will be the charter revision. Last time I thought we were going to have a selectmen meeting on Monday, but they didn't have the meeting. That's been changed and reorganized, so there was no selectmen meeting. It was supposed to be a special meeting to talk about moving money around between departments and things. I had announced it previously on the show. But that didn't happen. So here I am. I put together a program about the Charter Revision Commission because I thought that was long overdue. You did see my disclaimer up there. Anything I say tonight will be my opinion. Everything I say, hopefully, unless I ad-lib a little, will be from the minutes of the Charter Revision meeting, and we'll get to that after we go through some of our normal things. Now, at the beginning of my career, after I got out of school, I was told that by a company out in California, offshoot of the Rand Corporation, I was told that I would be able to retire in the year 2003. At the time, I thought that the date was extremely far off, and I couldn't fathom that. Now it's the year 2008, and I am, well, almost retired. 36 years ago, on November 15th, 1971, Al Smith began working for the town of Winchester, and in February 1989 was promoted to foreman. Today, July 3rd, 2008, Al retired after 36 years of service with the Public Works Department. Al was always in very early in the morning. I saw him down there many times early in the morning when I was trying to get information either about my property or other things around the lake. And there is a rumor that Al was very strong in the early days when he started with the town, and is rumored to be able to lift a tailgate for the truck and put it in place with his bare hands, where others would have used a loader. Al is known to be very courteous and gentle when dealing with his subordinates and other employees, and is well liked by all in the Public Works Department. Al will be spending more of his time with his family. Let's all wish him well. And Al, while spending time with your family, don't eat too many of those homemade cookies that your wife makes 4 trays at a time for charity events around town. Now I want to make a couple clarifications. One is that, as I said last week, I went over quarter 2. Quarter 2 was the second quarter of the new Selectman administration, and that ended on May 6, 2008, May 6th. So all of the voting that I put up, all the records, were only up through May 6th meetings. The rest will be in quarter 3, which will end on August 6th. So somewhere around the middle or end of August, maybe the beginning of September, I'll have the third quarter report. So we're at the point here, as I mentioned last week, where this administration's almost been in. On August 6th, they've been in 9 months already, you know, and are getting close to being in for a year. So time's flying, things are getting done, and we all appreciate that. A couple corrections I want to put up. There are many corrections I could list, spelling things and this and that, because I do work pretty fast on the computers, and sometimes I miss a few things. I'm trying to meet deadlines. But the town manager is Keith Robbins. A couple weeks ago, I called him Keith Roberts by mistake a couple times because I have a friend named Keith Roberts that I've had for a long, long time, and that was a slip of the tongue. So I apologize to Keith, and from now on, he's going to be Keith Robbins. The town manager will not be able to make motions and seconds, as I mentioned last week. I made a little slip of the tongue there with, got things confused a bit, but he'll never be able to make motions in second. That's basically the selectman's job to do that. The town manager will continue to request agenda items and put the agenda together, request agenda items when needed for selectman consideration. And as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, the last agenda was almost all put on by the town manager because he's the CEO of the town, as we'll see later, and he's running the town, and he only goes to the selectmen when he needs advice, consultation, or decisions. Usually the advice and consultation is usually given outside the meeting, not in the meeting, but during the meeting. So, and the decisions are what really happens at the meeting, and any clarification that somebody has if they have a last-minute thing. And in other towns, you won't see too much of that. We have more here than I've seen in other places. Since we will be talking about the charter revision tonight, I have chosen as my special guest tonight, and yours as well, Henri Fayot, 1841 to 1925, the great French management theorist. He saw a manager's job as planning, organizing, commanding, coordinating activities, and controlling performance. He also espoused 14 principles of management organization. I'll discuss these concepts in greater depth during a future program when we get time. It'll take quite a bit of a program, at least a half an hour, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, 45 minutes to go over Henri's ideas. He's written books about it. You can look on the internet, Henri Fayot, and you can see all the information about him. And since then, some people have made his things a little more lax. I particularly like the original ones better, but they'll work whichever way you do it. Okay, now if we can go to the chart, I'll show you the agenda. And the first is comments, which I've already made. Notices, I got a bunch of notices tonight. Things are happening around town, selectmen meeting-wise. A bit about the budget and a bit about the tax information that went out over the last week or so. And a very small amount about planning and zoning. I did read the minutes from the 16th of June, and there wasn't really much to report on except things are going a little better there for the development, Aurora Estates. Still no decisions, a lot of questions, but since they reduced the number of their living units to 225 from 300, there's been a more pleasant change of information, and there's also things going on with the POCD. So we'll talk a bit about that, not much. And then most of the meeting, I hope to talk about the charter revision. So for notices, the Highland Lake Special Planning for Success program has been moved to July 17th. I had it on July 10th, but then I found out there was a selectman meeting on Monday, this coming Monday, plus another special town meeting. So I decided to report on that next week and put off the Highland Lake Special Planning for Success program until July 17th because of the selectmen meetings at the Gilbert School. So I want to tell all of you that like to go to these meetings, they'll be at the Gilbert School on Monday, beginning at 7 o'clock. There will be a special town meeting at 7 p.m. to explain the 205 capital projects resolution, and the finance director and bond experts will be present to answer questions. I've put that up here on the program before. So they're going to be the experts from the bond to be able to answer these questions for you. Now I do have here, I'm not going to read through it, I did get from the town hall today the statement of what's going to be in the meeting. I have it here, and then you vote yes or no on this, probably not at the Monday meeting, but at the referendum that'll come up later. And it's basically to move some money around on a bond issue. The bottom line is, over what we originally thought on the 206 bond, we're going to save about $55,000. Sure, this basically should be a no-brainer, but you never know what happens when you go to these meetings. It all goes according to plan. The referendum to vote on the issue will be held on July 12, 2008 at the Town Hall, P. Francis Hicks Room, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Now, take note of that, because we usually vote on a lot of things at the Pearson School. Sometimes we vote at the Gilbert School, but this time we're going to be in the Town Hall, and we're going to vote from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you have any questions or any confusion, give a call to the town clerk. Please vote if you're eligible. I always try to encourage everybody to vote. That's what's good about this country. We have that opportunity. Let's take advantage of it. The regular selectmen meeting will follow. And again, it's at the Gilbert School. So, and it's on the 7th, which is Monday. The acoustics for the meetings at the Gilbert School, in my opinion, are lousy. They're very good if you get up to the microphone, like for town meetings, and you speak into the microphone. But when selectmen are sitting around the table, I've seen over the last few years, it's very hard to hear them out in the audience. And they have to pass the microphone around. Sometimes they don't do that. And even when they do it, sometimes it doesn't sound too good. So if I were you, I'd get down there for 7 o'clock, attend the first meeting, vote, then go home and watch it on TV, or record it on TV while you're out and watch it later. What I'll do is I'll record it, and then later in the evening or the next day, I'll look at it and construct my program for next week. The proposed 2008-2009 budget was not reduced at the June 23rd 2008 annual town budget meeting. There were a couple attempts to reduce the budget there by substantial amounts, and they failed roughly 3-1. So that didn't happen. The next town budget referendum will be on Saturday, June 19th, 2008, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Pearson School. Make note of that. Pearson School, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And you'll basically be, as I'll show you in my budget slides, you're going to be voting on the same thing you did last time, either yes or no. Now, please vote again if eligible. Vote. So that's the second time I say please vote if eligible. At 6 p.m. on June 23rd, 2008, there was a special selectmen meeting at 6 p.m. at the Gilbert School. This is history now. The following votes were taken. It was a very short meeting. I mentioned it last week. Regarding a resolution to allow the town manager, Keith J. Robbins, to enter into the agreement for Phase 2 of the Village Green improvements. At this meeting, it was resolved that the town manager, Keith Robbins, is hereby authorized to enter into such agreements, contracts, and execute all documents necessary to said grant with the state of Connecticut for the Village Green Improvements Phase 2 STEEP 208-21. This was voted on unanimously. This is good for the town. We're getting on with the work down there at the Village Green, and this is to keep it moving along and make sure we get all our funding, etc. Then there was a vote to receive the donation of property located at 643 Jewel Road. The town of Winchester has accepted that property, that donation. They have property, the town does, surrounding that, not surrounding it, but on either side of it, on both sides of it. So they can combine that into a bigger parcel if all other things are equal, and then decide whether they want to keep it or sell it and get it on the tax rolls or use it for some town purposes. That was voted on unanimously. I'm glad to see that. That's very good. The assorted fund transfers, that there was a vote. That's where they were going to move monies around at that meeting, and they decided not to do that. They rescheduled it for this Monday that's just passed, and then they decided not to have that meeting as well. They have, I guess, 60 days to make these decisions they need to make, and I guess they have another way they want to approach that, either during the normal select meetings or another special meeting. So the assorted fund transfer, the vote was to table and call a special board meeting to be held on Monday, June 30th, 2008. That didn't happen at 7 o'clock. 7 p.m. in the P. Francis Hicks room. I went down for that meeting, and there was no meeting. So it's been changed. I don't know when it's going to be, but it was voted on unanimously at this meeting. When we find out when it is, we'll let you know. The next two charter revision meetings will be held at 7 p.m. on July 8, 2008, and on July 23, 2008, in the Town Hall. An agenda for the July 8, 2008 meeting is now available. You can get it on the internet, or you can get it from the town clerk's office in the Town Hall. Public comment is always accepted during the 15 minutes or so of each meeting. The last couple meetings, I don't think there was any public comment, and to the best of my knowledge, I was there at both meetings on time, and there was no public comment. So that was unusual. Usually somebody comes every other meeting or so. There's somebody from town, and you're invited. There'll be a few more meetings. I'll talk about that later when I get to the charter revision stuff. Okay, now the recent tax bill. A lot of people have been asking me about the recent tax bill, and I also want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for sending me cards and for stopping me on the street and giving me positive feedback on the program. I really appreciate that, because there's no real way of knowing exactly how many people watch these programs. You got to kind of go by feedback, but when they yell across the street at you, "Come back, Shane! Come back, Shane!" then you know they've been watching the program. Recent tax bills. Number one, you've all received tax bills this week, depending on what you own. But these tax bills that went out that you have now use the current revaluation mill rate of 24.67%. So that's what you were billed in these tax bills. And you were sent out a bill if you own property, houses and stores and whatever other property, a motor vehicle tax, and then there's a personal property tax that not everybody gets, but people who own businesses and other things and declare personal property, they get a bill as well. They're all based on 24.67. Now, when the budget passes, and we're at least 3 weeks away from that happening, maybe more, when the budget passes, an additional tax bill will eventually be sent out, if necessary, for the difference. Now, there is a possibility, slight possibility, it could happen, that the budget will be the same as it was last year, in which case no new tax bill will go out. But if the budget is increased by any percentage at all, then a new tax bill will go out, except for vehicles where the amount is less than $5. They don't send out bills for vehicles if the amount is less than $5, as I understand it from the town hall. So an additional tax bill will be sent out, if necessary, for the difference, if any, between the current mill rate and the approved budget mill rate, whatever that may be. We'll talk a bit about that in a few minutes. Let me also say, and I don't want to complicate this too much for people, but there has been in the past where the new budget was less than the previous budget, and the tax bills were sent out, and then they had to send out new tax bills, not tax bills, they had to send out money return to all people who had overpaid on their taxes. And that was, from what I can gather from the tax collector, a very, very complicated, time-consuming procedure. It's not likely to happen this year, but you never know. Anything can happen here. The budget, now I'm going to start on the budget, but I'm going to start with the proposed tax increase, because remember I told you I was asked by somebody to put the bottom line first and then give the backup later. Last week I didn't give any backup. This week I will. 1.33 mils, or 5.41%. So anywhere between, if this budget gets approved, at this existing budget gets approved as it stands at the next referendum, that's what it'll be, 1.33 mils in addition to what you have on your existing tax bills that were sent to you this week, or 5.41%. So that's that. Now, the budget is as proposed for 208-209 is $32,325,856, proposed for 208-209. $31,982,344 for the existing 2007, well, what was existing up till July 1st and is still in effect until a new budget gets passed, 2007-208 budget. The difference is $343,552 increase for 1.07%. The current tax rate, based upon adjusted for reevaluation, not including any of this budgeting we're voting on now, is 24.67 mils, and that's why when those tax bills are out, that's what they use, 24.67 mils. Now, the amount needed from taxes is more than the amount that the budget went up because there was less revenue this year and some other what I would call financial things that the financial director can talk to you about if you want to know. But the amount needed from taxes this year is $21,242,309,000 for 08-09. And last year it was $19,801,276 for 07 and 08. That leaves a difference of $1,441,033, $1,441,033. And if the budget gets approved, and in 3 more weeks when we have the meeting, then the new mill rate will be 26%. So you'll be sent out an additional bill for the difference between those 2 mill rates, all things being equal here. All right, so that's that for the budget. And I do encourage everybody to not only vote, but tell everybody you know to vote, and try to get as many people out to vote. It's on a Saturday, so people should be able to get there. Okay, now quickly, planning and zoning. A meeting was held on June 26, 2008. Although I didn't attend the meeting and have not yet received the minutes, I have been told the following information. Number one, and I'm only interested in the planning and zoning and in a few of the issues. I don't kind of belabor people who want to add to their houses and people who want to put in a new driveway and people who want changes in their own particular property. What I do is just basically concentrate on the critical path for the addition of the developments along the corridor between Winston and Torrington. And the second one now that the town is grappling with is Aurora Estates. That was the one that was 300 units and is now proposal is in the process of being made for 225 units as a compromise. May or may not pass. It's being debated and discussed, but I think it's good news. We're going in the right direction. As I said last night, it's not what I would like to see. I would like to see it more profitable to the town, but it's better than what we have now and will help us go a long way. So Aurora Estates will be making a presentation at the July 14th, 2008 meeting of Planning and Zoning. And I think that's a planning meeting, not a regular meeting. The regular meeting will be another 2 weeks after that. Somebody will probably be down there taping that meeting and probably show it. But if you're interested in this, you might want to go to the meeting or at least read the minutes when they're available. It usually takes 3-4 days or more to get the meeting minutes out because they're very thorough and very long. So, but you will, if you read those minutes, you'll know what happened at the meeting. The one thing you will miss is the expression on people's faces and, that kind of thing. But that's why it's always best to see the meeting on TV or go yourself if you're really interested in analyzing what's happening. Concerning the plan of conservation and development, as you know, that's another thing we're trying to get our arms around, POCD for short. The Commission has selected a TPA design group and has just completed negotiating a scope of services. Now, because of the holiday, I went down today to see Charles Carno, the planning director of planning. He wasn't in today, so I'm going to get a copy of that and read it and maybe I'll be able to report on it in a future meeting. But if anybody else wants a copy of it, you can get it from the Planning and Zoning office down in the town hall here in Winston. The next set of minutes, I'm hoping, they weren't out today on the internet, and usually when they're finished, they're right up on the internet. So I guess they're not finished yet, and nobody was in the office. But next week, maybe I'll have those minutes and I can look at them and just verify what I've stated. I got this from Mr. Carno himself, so this is pretty accurate information, but brief, because I didn't have the minutes. Now, we're going to talk a bit tonight. I did have some time tonight, so I thought I'd make good use of it by talking about the town charter, the charter for the town of Winchester. And as you know, a while back, we were, when these new selectmen came in, one of their campaign promises was that we would have a relook at the charter. And the first thing was the Board of Selectmen's charge on 12/03/07, just about a month after they were elected. They made a charge to do these following things. The vote was yes 5, all the Republicans, no 2, the Democrats. So the Democrats were not in favor of this motion to do these things I'm going to talk about in a minute. Number 1, to consider changing the town's current Board of Selectmen town manager form of government to an elected mayoral form of government. So they wanted this new Charter Commission to look at that. And the Charter Commission was convened. 5 people were named to it. Pardon me. 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and 1 unaffiliated person. That's me. That's why you see the disclaimer up there at the beginning of the program when I talk about the charter. Sometimes I don't put the disclaimer up if I'm not talking about the charter. But if I am talking about the charter, I always have the disclaimer up, and I want you to know right now that everything you see here is Brian O'Haron got from either the minutes, or if I do an ad lib, that's my view and my opinion. I'll try to do none of those if I can, and not the opinions of the Charter Revision Commission until they vote and finally make their decisions. So number 1, the selectmen wanted the approach that the Charter Revision Commission is taking is, number 1, mayoral form of government of town of Winchester. That's the first thing that we're looking at, and we'll talk more about that as we go along. Number 2, if no consensus, once we knock together and construct a mayoral form of government charter for the town of Winchester, if we don't have any consensus that we want to go to the selectmen with that charter and recommend it to them, then the Charter Revision Commission is going to consider changes to strengthen the town manager form of government, and then decide whether they want to bring that to the selectmen or not, and you know what that'll happen. There have been no votes on that. We're not really working on as a group, we're not working on the charter for the town manager. There are some thoughts that have been floating around, but once we decide on this mayoral form whether we want to proceed with that or not, then we will go to, if we don't want to proceed with it, then we will go to the town manager form and try to strengthen that. A lot of the people that came to the first public meeting, there was a bit of a lobby group there, but that's my opinion, they wanted to see the town manager form strengthened, and only a very few people, 1 or 2, wanted to see the mayoral form of government. And remember now, as I tell you, is again Brian's opinion, the people that feel strongly show up for these meetings, and the other people kind of leave it to the town management and let them get on with it. So, and there's nothing wrong with either approach. So I don't have a problem with people coming and saying what they think. And it's all recorded. It's all in the minutes down at the town hall in a special folder called Charter Revision Minutes in the town clerk's office. You can read it all for yourself. So if there's no consensus they will consider the town manager form of government. We will as a commission. Number 3, and I want to get this point across on here because there are a lot of things in the charter that don't matter whether it's a town manager form of government or a mayoral form of government. There's reasons for a mayoral form of government, and there's other reasons for a town manager form of government, but there are a whole bunch of things that I call number 3 here, and we'll talk a bit about tonight. Make common denominator changes and corrections that will make it more efficient to manage the town and apply to either form. So while we're going along here, as we update the charter for the mayoral form, we're also, there's a whole bunch of things that are like typos. There's things that are in there that we would like to see improved in their language. There are things we'd like to see eliminated in the language. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight, but this won't be an all-inclusive meeting. A lot of the changes that were making by the legal people in town, the lawyer, town attorney, I won't be touching on tonight, just sparsely. But there are things there that if you update the charter, either way, you still need to do the same sort of thing, based upon requests from people in town and ideas that were brought up at the Charter Revision Commission. So, you've seen the disclaimer. So far, no vote has been taken on the major issue. I want to make that very clear. No vote of the Charter Revision Commission has been taken on the major issue, which is which form of government to recommend to the selectmen. That hasn't been taken yet. We're still working on that, and we have an approach which I'll explain to you. The day is near. It's probably within the next few months, month or two, maybe 2 months, that will probably be ready, one way or another, to at least have a public hearing, which is required, and then get it off to the selectmen. Once the selectmen get the recommendation, then they make a decision, and there's certain rules applied to that, then they have to have a public hearing. And then once they have their public hearing, then the whole kettle of fish will go out to the voters, and the target referendum date for getting it to the voters is the November national election is being considered. No decision has been made, and there are timing issues involved and everything. So that's what they're kind of targeting for. I get asked that question all over town. When are we going to have this presented back to the selectmen? And this is from just regular citizens. And the answer is they're shooting for November. No guarantee it'll be made, but that would be a good time. And by the way, Torrington's also trying to get theirs in for their November election as well. There have been 11 meetings to date. They have lasted an average of 72 minutes. And don't forget, 15 minutes of that, in many cases, is the public comment. Sometimes it's longer than 15 minutes. There are sometimes questions answered asked to the public and answered by the public during the meeting, too, if there's people there. That's rare, but sometimes. So 1 hour and 12 minutes. So we do have a time. We start at 7, and we say we want to try to be out of there by 9, and sometimes by 8:30. But we always make it. We've never yet not met our time frame. And on average, it's 1 hour and 12 minutes. And to me, that's very important, as you know from watching these programs. And the reason the meetings are kept there is very professional people. The meetings are reasonably professional and efficient. The commission is relatively small, 5 people, not 15. In the procedure for redoing a charter, you can have up to 15 people on a Charter Revision Commission. I thank God that they didn't. Matter of fact, I wouldn't participate if it were 15, so it wouldn't matter to me then. But this is relatively small. It's 5. You got the 2 parties represented. There has been some feedback that maybe the independents should have been there as well, but they're not. And I'm there as an unaffiliated person, but I do in no way represent all the unaffiliated people. Some will agree with me, some won't. But I'm there just to try to use my experience over the years in business to try to make this as much of a CEO-oriented charter as I can, and a business-oriented charter. And my contributions to this charter. I did a lot of the research, but the things they're actually going to put in there that I asked them to put in there are minimal. There are only a couple things. So a lot of things I'd like to see in there aren't going to make it in there for very good reasons. Some of them aren't charter worthy. They're not. They shouldn't be in a charter. They should be more in ordinances or in a selectman purview or the town manager's purview. So they're very efficient. The commission is really small, and the commission members do most of their assigned work between meetings. Matter of fact, they do it all between meetings. Every commissioner, especially the 3 lawyers now, because we're in the later stages, they take a lot of homework home every week, and they do it every 2 weeks, and they do it, and they come back, and they send the odd email between meetings, but they come back, and then when they do come back, and we do, I use the word gather here, but when we come back, or we gather, every 2 weeks or so, we did miss one meeting for one reason or another, we gather to gain consensus on policy. There's always been a quorum here. We haven't had one meeting yet where there wasn't a quorum. So we gather every 2 weeks to gain consensus on policy, approach, and individual issues. And that happens relatively quickly. There's not much debate. There's no arguing. There's no wandering. Not too much wandering. There's a bit of wandering, but not much. And we also do like to have our 15 minutes with anybody who wants to come in and speak to the commission. Next week there's a person coming in and to speak to the commission with special needs for the town that he would like to see considered in this charter change. Most voting on charter issues to date has been unanimous. They're mostly consensus votes. We haven't done any real the real bottom line votes yet, but we vote on whether we like this wording or that wording. What's a consensus in that? Do we all agree with that wording? And we've made quite a few of those. And of course, none of that will be official until we go through the public hearings. We get a selectmen, they go through their public hearing, and then we go through the referendum. Any of this can be changed along the way, and it may never even end up at the referendum. The meetings are held twice a month when practical, and each meeting has a 15-minute public comment session that is sometimes made use of by the public. No one has been turned away to date. Some people just send in an email or a letter. A lot of people, some people show up in person, but we haven't turned down anybody's request yet. They've all been looked at, and decisions or consensus one way or the other have been made by this commission. And a lot of the times the consensus doesn't belong in the charter. 3 or 4 of mine were in that category, and a lot of them that come in, a lot of them that were in on the public hearing in the beginning. The Charter Revision Commission has to have a public hearing at the beginning of their process within so many days, and at the end of their process before sending the recommendation off to the selectmen. When the selectmen get it, they will look at it, then they'll have a public hearing within so many days, and then within so many more days, they have to get it into the town clerk, and then within so many more days, there has to be a referendum within so many days. And some of these, the whole process can be pretty long. It could take years to get through this process. If that's what people wanted to do. I think most people here want to try to get it done by November and then get on with other things, because the changes in the charter, hopefully, if they're made one way or another, help the town management, and help the taxpayers, and help the students and the elderly and everybody else. So we're making a strong attempt here. The committee has received a variety of letters, opinions, and information from the public. Individual questions are also submitted in writing from citizens from time to time. The first meeting on December 1, 2007, was for the commission members to elect officers and set a date for the first public hearing, January 9, 2008. That was about it. I think that meeting lasted 16 minutes. The second meeting was January 9, 2008. It was a public hearing attended by about 35. That isn't an exact number. It's the number that's used all the time when people quote a number for this meeting. 35 members. Some of them were husband and wife, wife and husband. So it isn't really 35 individual people. A lot of them were from the lake. I would say almost, 3/4 were probably from the lake. One way or another, members of the public. Some papers were also submitted. The Taxpayers Association submitted a long letter, a 1 page or 2, and other people that couldn't attend that night either submitted a letter or gave it to somebody else to read at the meeting when they came. So, and then they went on the record. And you should find these letters in the folder, Charter Revision folder, in the town clerk's office at the town hall. I just went in there the other day and I saw a lot of letters in there. I'm not saying all the letters are in there, but most of them should be in there. There will be a second public hearing prior to the commission sending its recommendation to the selectmen for consideration and a decision. So you'll all get a chance to get a copy of this when it's finalized for the selectmen. You'll be able to go and read it. You'll be able to come to the public hearing. You'll be able to voice your opinion. And then if the commission agrees with some of the input or whatever, then they'll change it, and then they'll send it off to the selectmen, who will then have go through a little process themselves, and then have another public hearing. So there's plenty of chance here to get your 2 cents in. At the third meeting on January 22nd, 2008, there was consensus that the commission would first analyze the strong mayoral form as a procedural matter. And I really want to emphasize, this is a procedural matter. It doesn't necessarily mean in the end that a vote will be taken to send the strong mayoral form off to the selectmen. There may not be a consensus there, as I said earlier. But that was the approach that we wanted to take, because that's kind of what we were chartered to do by the selectmen. But as I say here, there was also consensus by the 5 commissioners that the commission was not limited to either or approach on this issue. So the commission does have a right, and I read that in the instructions today when I reread them from the town hall. I have them right here. This is the whole process for the Charter Revision Commission. You can get a copy of this again in the Charter Revision. It's called the Charter Revision Calendar of Events. It's got all the dates and the rules in here, and the rules are also in that folder. So if you have any question, you should go down and take a look at it down there. So that's what gives us the ability to look at both forms and to see, recommend the form that we, the Charter Commission, Revision Commission, thinks would be the best for the town of Winchester. The selectmen do not have to accept whatever is sent to them, so they might just turn it down, and probably with them wouldn't even be a public hearing. I'm not sure about that, but you can check on that down at the town hall. After the 5th meeting, March 11th, 2008, there was consensus by the Charter Revision Commissioners that the charter provisions relating to the adoption of the annual town budget, the town meeting, and the town referendum should remain essentially unchanged. Now, this was a big fear of some of the people from, say, in town. They wanted to make sure that the Charter Revision Commission wasn't going to recommend canceling the annual town budget meeting, the town meeting, annual town budget meeting, any town meetings for resolutions and ordinance and things like that, and any referendum. So they're very worried about the taxpayers' rights there and keeping that the same. So this is the resolution that was put together, the consensus rather that was put together, and you shouldn't see too much change to that. Now there are some minor changes to it, which I'll touch on here tonight. At the 8th and 9th meetings, April 23rd, 2008, and May 29th, 2008, the commission agreed to proceed to actually draft a mayoralty form charter. The first consensus we made was to look at it. We went out and got other charters. I did a lot of that work. The town manager secretary helped collect all these charters. We all went over the charters. We reduced them down to their essence, and then that was all done. And then later, at these 2 meetings, the commission agreed to proceed to draft a mayoralty form charter as a straw man, with the following features. Now here's where we get into some of the features, so pay close attention. If you're videotaping this, great. If not, you can write things down, and if you don't want to do that, you can down and look at all the minutes, the 11 sets of minutes, and you'll see all this information in there. These come right from the minutes. I might have changed a word or two to make it flow a bit, but they were mainly just adding a "the" here or an "a" there or something like that. So A, elected mayor for a term of 2 years, non-voting. Now remember, Torrington's now trying to get their elected mayor to be elected for 4 years. But we have chosen 2 years here in this straw man. Member of the Board of Selectmen, BOS is Board of Selectmen, except to break the votes. What do I have on a tag? Oh, the elected mayor for a term of 2 years, non-voting. He's a non-voting member of the Board of Selectmen. So we decided to keep the Board of Selectmen, not change it to council or anything like that. Doesn't mean it won't be changed in the future, but right now it's a member of the Board of Selectmen, and he only votes, as many other chartered mayor does, he will not vote except to break a tie votes. The mayor formulates the annual budget, submits to the selectmen, and then it is submitted to the Board of Finance. There'll be a separate Board of Finance. Right now, we have a joint Board of Finance. Then to the town meeting, adjourned to referendum like we have now. The mayor proposes appointments to and removals of non-elected members of the boards and commissions, subject to Board of Selection approval. That's very important, because some people think that if the mayor just appoints them without getting the Board of Selectmen to approve, revise and consent and approve, then it'd be too strong an approach. That's people in town, some people I talk to think that way. B, there'll be a 5-member Board of Selectmen. We have 7 now, but we'll have 5 then, because a lot of the duties will be transferred to the mayor here. And the Board of Finance, so there'll be less work for them to do. But there'll be a 5-member Board of Selectmen elected for 2-year terms. And on May 29, 2008, although we haven't finalized this yet, I don't think, we discussed deleting their salary. Their salary is minimal now, $1,000, $1,500 for the mayor, something like that. And we're discussing eliminating that in this charter revision. There'll be a 4-member elected, it's very important, elected Board of Finance, because you have 2 options here. You can have a nominated board like they have in Torrington, or you can have an elected board. And this, there was consensus of these commission members that an elected board would be better for the town of Winchester. Basically, there will be 4-year terms for these Board of Selectmen, and half of them would be elected each 2-year cycle. So at the next election, half of them would be elected in the following election to the other half, and then it would keep flip-flopping like that every 2 years. That way you always have 2 people that are on there at all times, and carrying over the 2 years. Okay, so with the mayor as a member only, he's a member of the Board of Finance, like Torrington has as well, and other towns have, entitled to vote to break ties only. So he has a tie breaking vote there. The Board of Finance will receive the budget prepared by the mayor and reviewed and approved by the Board of Selectmen, and finalizes the budget for submission to the town meeting. D, shorten the budget process. We've had a lot of feedback from people that we'd like to shorten the budget process, starting with having earlier annual budget town meeting if possible. That's section 1108 of the charter, and that's entitled annual budget meeting. That's where these changes would occur. And shortening the periods in sections 1107, duties of the manager on the budget. And we would try to shorten those. And section 1108, adoption of the budget, try to shorten those. If annual town budget not approved by September or October 1st, following commencement of the fiscal year, The Board of Selectmen may adopt the prior fiscal year budget with a 3% increase across the board, and may be accepting debt service. That's still being discussed. And then the increase, next E, increase the competitive bid limit in Section 911, competitive bidding, from 3,000 to 15,000. And then increase the 15,000 limit in Section 305C, definitions of voters and electors, to 50,000. I might have a mistake there, but okay. So actually, that's definition of voters. Okay, and 305D, town meeting on referendums, ordinances, and resolutions. That will go up to $50,000 from $15,000 as it is today. Now, this is one of those changes I told you about that we'd like to put in no matter which way we go with this charter, if we do go with the charter at all, that would be a change. And input was received from the town manager and the finance director on that, as well as other people. G, add a more comprehensive conflict of interest provision to preclude elected officials from directly or indirectly doing business with the town during their terms of office. Use a form of current charter or the Plymouth mayorally formed charter when otherwise applicable. You can get a copy of the Plymouth charter down in town. It's a mayoral form charter. Inclusion of a 5-year revenue, expense, and capital budget plan, an annual review process to be drafted May 29, 2008. That was May 29, 2008 was when we decided consensus to put this in here. Power of investigation by appointing authority possible with subpoena power, May 29, 2008. At the June 25, 2008 meeting, which is recently, it was the Commission's consensus that Section 1601 removals, that the appointing authority and not some third party should appoint and have the power to remove appointees to the extent permitted by law. Further, the power of appointment as to both permanent and alternate members should reside in the appointing authority. On the issue of appeal, the Commission discussed either removing the language stating that there are no appeal rights or qualifying it by except as otherwise permitted by law. The conflict of interest provision was discussed. It was suggested that some supermajority waiver provision for persons no longer in office for the 2-year period and incorporating the provision as part of Ordinance 132, the Winchester Code of Ethics, to give the Ethics Commission jurisdiction for enforcement. So this be making it a very much stronger charter than it is now. It was suggested that certain due process provisions be added to Section 312, automatic vacancy investigation. The Commission's consensus was to increase the dollar limitations proposed in the new Section 911, competitive bidding. The Commission discussed the proposed new Section 914, interdepartmental transfer or appropriation, and agreed that the same monetary procedures should apply to the new Section 915, interdepartmental transfers of encumbered appropriations. The Commission agreed that Section 919, contracting for tax collections relating to privatization of tax collections, should be deleted. That means that, as Torrington does, Torrington goes out and they subcontract all our tax collecting to a company or a person. We have the ability to do that in our charter. This says we should take that out of there. We recommend taking that out, so we can't do that. The Commission also approved new sections 1106E and F to be combined regarding the 5-year plan, and that was something that I asked for, and everybody else seems to agree with that and feel strongly too about it. Also, part of the annual budget or as a separate report attached thereto, the manager shall present a 5-year set of business objectives, and I put in parentheses a plan, for the town, including the schools, to include anticipated revenue each year for the town budget, total anticipated expenditures, and capital expenses. And then F, this proposal, this projection shall be approved by the selectmen and updated each year. Once approved by the selectmen, the projection, in parentheses plan, shall be reviewed quarterly by the selectmen and annually by the town budget meeting for informational purposes and to allow feedback. Now, these last things I've been talking about as a matter of fact, almost everything is, especially the last things from our last meeting. They need still to have some crafting. There's 3 lawyers on this commission, and they're doing most of the heavy lifting when it comes to redrafting the charter and getting all the legal words in and agreeing or not with the town attorney and on various things like that. And they're doing a darn good job. And I'm not a lawyer, so I don't get too involved in that. But I am concerned about the business aspects, as I said earlier. And if you look at the minutes, you won't see my name mentioned too often. But where it is mentioned, I've been very lucky, and my suggestions have been pretty well received. So with that, that's the end of this meeting tonight. If anybody has any questions on any of this, remember, they're my opinions. I gathered most of the information from the minutes. I might have mistranscribed something and hurry to get it done, but you can go down yourself. You can have a look at it, and you can determine whether or not you understand it. If not, you can ask one of the people on the commission or come to the next commission meeting and talk to in the public comment section, ask any questions you want, or make any contribution you want, as long as they're polite and professional. That's all we ask, because that's how the meetings are run by the chairwoman, Attorney Kathy O'Brien. All right, thank you very much. Next week we'll be discussing the selectmen meeting and the special meeting that are being held next Monday. Have a happy 4th of July and a safe 4th of July. Thank you.